All right, well, let's get this party started, shall we? Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eric Kemple, President of the Rotary Club of Chicago. I call to order the second meeting of the First Five Collaborative, consisting of the Rotary Clubs of Chicago, San Francisco, Oakland, Seattle, and Los Angeles. Welcome everyone, not only our Rotarians from our five clubs, but also the many other Rotarians and non-Rotarians out there today. I know we have members from Jennifer Jones' home district in Ontario. We have Rotarians from Budapest, the Caribbean, Argentina, Pakistan, India, Malaysia, Sweden, Nepal, Australia, Romania, Moldova, and many other places across the world and across the US. And you are in for a fantastic program today. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you to keep yourself on mute during the meeting. During our program today, if you have questions for our speaker, please put them in the chat box and we'll get to them if time allows. Also, for those looking for greater fellowship with their fellow Rotarians, please stay on Zoom after the meeting and we will put you into breakout rooms. Now, to give the thought of the day, I'd like to introduce you to my president-elect, Marga Hugo. Marga.
Thank you, Eric. Have you heard the phrase, a virus is the great equalizer? Would you think so? Yes, it does not discriminate who gets it, but I invite you to a few seconds of introspection. Place yourself somewhere downtown in your city. It is nighttime. Open your sleeping bag. It is on the floor, perhaps under a bridge. You're alone. Perhaps you ran away from home. You're scared. The safety nets you had are suddenly gone. Or maybe they've been gone for a long time. You will wake up tomorrow and will not know what your day will be like. What do I do? Where do I go? Is there anyone who cares, who really cares about me? Is there anybody who will give me real help? And this virus, will it kill me? How do I know? Who will take care of me? Perhaps you're realizing that this virus is not that great equalizer. Friends, in these times of so much hardship and confrontation, let us try to put ourselves in the place of others. Let's try to walk in other people's shoes. Let us see how we can really, really help. Let us listen and let us be humble. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Marga. Next up, I'd like to introduce you to the immediate past president for the Rotary Club of Chicago, Mr. Marshall Schmidt.
Thank you very much, Eric, and thank you, Marga, for setting the proper tone for this meeting, given what we're about to discuss. And so welcome everyone to the second meeting of the Collaborative of the First Five Rotary Clubs. The committee that organized this meeting asked me to spend a few minutes explaining how we got here. The Collaborative is a child of the COVID pandemic. In the spring, when the United States shut down to combat the pandemic, Rotary clubs did what they do best, found a way to share fellowship, even in the worst of times. This led to the creative use of Zoom technology. For years, with in-person meetings the norm, the benefits of Zoom were lost. But necessity brought people to their computer screens. They discovered that suddenly any Rotary meeting and even any speaker was in reach. On April 14th of this year, Melinda Monterosa, the then program chair-elect for LA5, reached out to me with a, quote, fun idea. She and Rick Gibson, whom I'd met at the Large Club Conference in Long Beach last year, reached out to the rest of the presidents of the first five clubs. The appeal to the collaboration was obvious. Within 3 days, the presidents of each of the five clubs participated in a Zoom meeting. It was quickly realized that Melinda's, quote, fun idea had endless potential. A first meeting was scheduled for May 7th. It was a Zoom side chat with the 5 presidents moderated by President Mark Maloney. The second half of the meeting consisted of breakout groups with the community and international service chairs of each club to discuss a project on which all 5 clubs could collaborate. A steering committee quickly agreed on combating homelessness as the group's theme. What you are about to hear is what we all hope is the first of many projects of the first 5 collaborative focusing on combating homelessness. The first 5 clubs are the pioneers of Rotary. With this collaboration, we hope to continue to lead the way through Rotary's second century, adapting to the challenges of our day, taking advantage of the opportunities that modern technology provides, while preserving the values of fellowship and service, which are timeless, demonstrating to the world that we are all more powerful when we work together to make the world a better place.
Thank you very much, Marshall. And now, please welcome President of the Rotary Club of San Francisco, Mr. J.T. Forbes. J.T.
Thank you, President Eric. As of January 2019, on a single night, roughly 568,000 people experienced homelessness in the United States. For perspective, that's more than the entire city of Oakland, California, in one night. Homelessness is generally defined as a person who lacks a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. Now think about that for a second. Fixed, meaning non-mobile; regular, meaning the same place every day; and adequate, meaning acceptable to sustain human life. Now think about the tents, the shopping carts, and the bags. Now think about underneath the freeway, behind the grocery store, alongside a building, and right in the middle of the city. And finally, think about the lack of food, hygiene, clean water, and the production of waste. To face just one of these challenges would be difficult enough. But now imagine facing all of them all of the time. Where will I stay tonight? What part of the town is the safest? When will I eat again? When will I shower next? Being faced with the uncertainty of basic human needs creates a world of desperation. So let's just build shelters, give them food, and make sure they have bathroom facilities, right? Won't that solve homelessness? It could. But what about the reasons people become homeless in the first place? Think about the person that lost their job or have little to no income to pay for housing, food, childcare, healthcare, or education. These are the folks that are living paycheck to paycheck. You've heard the phrase, you're one paycheck away from being homeless. And in our major cities, that may be true because the cost of living is so high. But what about the person that lacks employment opportunities, especially in a pandemic? Where do they go? Or think about the people that are experienced domestic violence. Domestic violence is the leading cause for women and children to be homeless. Or the person that has a mental illness. They can't function and they can't sustain a livelihood. Or the person that has a drug and alcohol addiction. Or there's lack of affordable health care. Think about having to decide between paying rent or the health care for your mental illness. It's a tough decision. There may be a shortage of housing, and there could be a lack of public assistance. Whatever the underlying reasons, if we don't address them, we'll continue to have a steady flow of homelessness in the United States. Listen, as much as I want to, we're not going to solve this crisis during the meeting. There are people smarter than me studying the subject to understand the most effective way to help. But if you look at any top 10 list related to homelessness, you'll find at least 4 out of the 5 cities represented here today will be on that list. When the first 5 met so many months ago, we knew we wanted to do a service project together that was relevant to each of our cities. And to no surprise, homelessness was at the top. We wanted to help our communities to show the power of Rotary, the power of Rotarians, and the power of our ability to serve during a pandemic. So many facets of this problem, we decided to focus on health. More specifically, hygiene. To talk more about that, I'd like to introduce you to my fellow president from the Los Angeles number 5, Mr. Matt Ball. Matt?
Thank you, JT. You know, it's kind of awesome to be able to say that, knowing that the influence of all of our collective first 5 Rotary clubs represent to the world of charitable service a vetted organization where trust is already established. That trust in Rotary as a recognizable name enables us to approach people and organizations in need and to be taken seriously when we say that we want to give, that we want to be part of charitable solutions within our communities. So as you know, and as we've talked about, when the first five clubs and our leadership came together, we did look to the most universal needs in each of our cities. And as Marshall and JT have talked about, we surmised that homelessness was a common denominator to all of our communities and perhaps something that we could combat with a comprehensive approach. So to best serve this homeless population in each of our cities, we decided to reach out and ask for donation of hygiene kits to be distributed evenly amongst our 5 clubs. We felt that hygiene supplies are an evergreen need and that kits are a great introductory point for other services as well. So suppliers that begin with a basic hygiene kit, we ask for the basic needs beginning with 2 bars of hand soap, 2 hand towels, 4 toothbrushes, 1 tube of toothpaste, and 2 combs. Now I know that sounds very basic, but with that basic kit in hand, each club may then choose to add items that would be attainable through local suppliers or your local partners, also taking into account needed items germane to your respective environments. For example, some additional items might include hand sanitizer and face masks, and others may include disposable rain ponchos or even socks. Some may include feminine hygiene products if you feel it's appropriate. So metaphorically, the buying power, or in this case, the asking power of our 5 collective Rotary clubs has made it possible for us to reach out to familiar partners in charitable work from our respective cities. We approach these partners for potential storage, for distribution manpower, and for other available hygiene kit items that we may not have considered. For example, the Salvation Army is one of our most significant partners in this effort. Also working with us is Latter-day Saint Charities, a safe haven, homeless prenatal program, Path with Art, the Night Ministry, and Wellspring Family Services, just to name a few. And naturally, if any other organizations or entities would like to join us in this effort or have hygiene kit items to donate in any of our cities, we welcome their participation. We hope to utilize these hygiene kits to highlight additional services within our communities by inserting Rotary Cares messages, along with a listing of shelters, resource organizations, or perhaps emergency contact information. It's our choice as to what we'll put on that information card, but our target to accomplish this united, simultaneous distribution of these hygiene kits will occur during the Homelessness Awareness Week from November 15th through the 22nd, approximately 5 weeks from today. So execution will begin anytime within that week relative to each club's calendar. Our core group has been planning for some time, and this joint meeting serves as our official kickoff. So we hope that our members and our Rotary friends will join us to help execute this effort. If successful, this project will get over 10,000 hygiene kits into the hands of our neighbors without shelter and hopefully guide them to some additional resources. It's an honor to turn the next portion of our meeting over to the president of our formidable Rotary Club in Oakland, otherwise known as Oakland 3. Please welcome Ces Butner to the microphone. Ces.
You're muted, Ces.
Yeah, all right. I unmute myself. Okay. So Rotarians, that is a service project that the First Five collectively wants you to get excited about. I'd like to thank Matt from LA5 and First Five presidents and committee members for all the work you put into this effort for a perfect example of service above self. We at Oakland number 3 have taken on this Rotary motto combined with this year's Rotary slogan of Rotary opens opportunities to produce our theme for the year. Rotary opens opportunities for service above self. Well, given this COVID pandemic year and all that is associated with it, the First Five are giving you this unique opportunity to fulfill your commitment to service above self with this service project. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our inspirational speaker of the day, Jennifer Jones. Jennifer is the founder of President of Media Productions a 25-year-old award-winning media company in Windsor, Ontario. She is a proud member of the Rotary Club of Windsor, Roseland. Her talents have strengthened Rotary's reach and impact through many roles, including trustee of the Rotary Foundation, Rotary International Vice President and Director, and International Assembly Moderator, co-chair of the End Polio Now, Make History Today campaign, raising funds alongside Bill and Melinda Gates and their foundation and many other responsibilities. Jennifer is leader in cultivating experimental fundraising opportunities such as Rotary's Polio Golf Day with Jack Nicklaus, which raised over $5.25 million for polio eradication in one day. Working alongside political figures, celebrities, global leaders, she uses her voice to raise awareness and hundreds of millions of dollars to eradicate disease, support peace, provide clean water and sanitation in developing areas of the world. Her skill as professional broadcaster and expert storyteller inspires hope and promise and motivates people to action. Jennifer's warmth and humility touches everyone she meets. She has received many awards, recognitions including Rotary's Service Above Self Award and the Citation for Meritorious Service and the YMCA Peace Medallion and the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. But perhaps most impressive is that as of October 1, Jennifer Jones became the first female president nominee in Rotary's 115-year history. As the first woman to be nominated to be president, Jones understands how important it is to follow through on Rotary's diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. And I quote, "I believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion begins at the top for us to realize growth in female membership and members under the age of 40. These demographics need to see their own reflection in their leadership," Jones said. "I will champion double-digit growth in both categories and will never lose sight of our entire family." My fellow Rotarians, I give you Jennifer Jones, Rotary International President nominee for 2022-2023. Jennifer.
Thank you, Ces, for the incredibly warm welcome, and hello to everyone. What an absolute honor and privilege it is to be here as you kick off this historic initiative. I know that the word historic has been already used, but I want to say it again. This is groundbreaking, watching the first 5 clubs come together to understand that your power to collaborate is going to be greater than the single parts of each club. And so when I got the invitation, there was no way that I couldn't be here on this meeting when you're launching this incredibly significant project. Now, homelessness is something obviously that touches us the world over. And unfortunately, COVID, we all know, is exacerbating the issue and the problem in every part of the world. We see lineups at food banks. We see lineups in parts of our world where there are many affluent communities. And yet, as was said earlier, sometimes people are just a paycheck away. I want to commend Eric and JT and Ces and Jeff and Matt, all of you as the presidents of your club for this. But I also want to give a shout out to Melinda, who was mentioned earlier, for having the foresight to come up with, I have an idea. And isn't that what we are all about? The power of one to be able to say, I have an idea. And that we all are able to rally around that and say, you know what? We like what you're saying, and let's get behind it and let's do it. And that's because we're people of action. That's what we do. You know, my youngest brother and I, we had a great conversation a few years back as I was prepping for a media interview. And it was about the role of civil society. It was about humanitarian issues. And out of his mouth came these words. He said, in order to live in the kind of society you want, you have to help build it. Let me repeat that. In order to live in the kind of society you want, you have to help build it. And that's what you're doing. You're looking at the most vulnerable. You're looking at people who might in a very easy way, be left behind. You're providing dignity, you're providing hope. And it might not be the resolution, but you know, we have to take steps. You can't solve the entire process, the entire problem. But if we don't start somewhere, we don't make any kind of dent at all. And so, you know, when past President Mark was here and challenged you all to come up with an idea, how wonderful that you were able to see the collaborative nature of what you could do as a group. And that is a powerful story that we need to share. And I see that there's 225 people on this call. I know, as was mentioned, from clubs around the world. I hope you're going to tell the story of what the first 5 are doing, because you know what? It will inspire others to take action and to look at your example and to understand that, again, each one of us can make that little bit of a difference. And it's important that we all understand that we're empowered through our membership in this organization to be able to do things like that. You know, I have a really good friend in my home Rotary Club. Her name is Aruna Kushik, and she works as a mediator actually in one of our local hospitals. And she and I traveled to India back in February. We were there participating in the 100th anniversary of Rotary in India. Now, one of the things that she's taught me and told me about in the past is that when she was a young woman, she's of Indian descent, and when she was a young woman, she lived in Calcutta, and she actually worked side by side with what she calls Sister Teresa. And I called her a couple of days ago because I said, you know, there's no better example I can think of in my own mind of how someone dealt with people who were disenfranchised, homeless, sick, and needed some kind of help than Mother Teresa, Saint Teresa, as she's now called. But she called her sister. And I said, do you remember, because you've told me about the conversations you've had before, but do you remember some of the words? And she spoke them to me in Hindi. And what she said, now translated into English, and this is what Sister said. She said, just do the work. Just help. The money will come. Just make sure that the people are taken care of. And that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. You're living proof that by joining together, identifying, as Matt outlined, the hygiene essentials that are going to, again, provide dignity for folks. And just as JT told us about the contributing factors, because there are so many different issues that compound what homelessness means. And it might be different in every part of the world. But right now we know what it looks like in our own communities. And as I said, COVID has exacerbated it. You know, I coined this phrase when I was looking at putting together some of my goal and vision statements for running for this role that I'm entering into. And one of the things that I talked about was our ability to adapt, one of our core strategic pillars. And, you know, we kind of thought that when we were working on our new strategic action plan, that ability to adapt, and this is going back 1.5 years ago, might have been more of an internal kind of thing, but it's become our North Star. And it has tested us. COVID has tested us in ways that we've never seen before. But the words that I put to that was that when the world stepped down, we stepped up. And that's, I think, a really important thing for us to be able to celebrate as Rotarians, as people of action, that we don't let things like this get in the way. We roll up our shirt sleeves and we say, what can we do? And so I am so enormously proud of all of you for what it is that you're contributing to your communities. And more than anything, for this collaborative spirit that you have. This is a best practice. And you know, you talk about the partnership, Salvation Army and the LDS and everything else that's gone into being able to help execute this. This is another pathway forward for us. We don't have to be isolated in our own clubs. We need to work on how we can leverage partnerships to take us to greater heights. And there's going to be lessons learned out of this. It's exactly the same thing with polio. It started with one person who had an idea, but then we leveraged it And look at where we're at now, at the level where we have the collaboration that we have with our partners, and that leverage point being one of the most important from a financial standpoint with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So never think that the power of one person's idea doesn't have the ability to change something so profoundly in our world. And so my hat's off to all of you. And I hope that what this does is it helps to speak to people that you're looking to attract to your clubs. Because right now I know we're meeting on virtual platforms, and I see a hybrid reality as we move forward. I don't see letting go of this. Yeah, we got to get together in person because that's what we do best. We're people. We need to be with people, but we need to do it safely. And so I do think, though, going forward, I wouldn't have been able to fly to where your meetings are tonight, and all 5 of them at once, but here we are all together being able to share that with people from around the world. We can't lose this because it helps us to tell our stories in a really great way. And those new members, I've been attending meetings around the world that are breaking their membership records in terms of attendance of people who are actually there. We know that there are people who are falling through the cracks, and we need to be very mindful of looking around our own clubs and making sure that we're nurturing people who might be intimidated by this kind of forum, or just need a little bit of tech help to be able to make sure that they're able to participate in full. But that's incumbent upon each one of us to kind of do that little, survey around our clubs. And so I encourage you to do that because, these are the victories. Attending a meeting like this, I'll talk about for a long time, and I'm going to talk about it to a lot of people. And you know what? You're all going to do the exact same thing. Now, I know that you wanted to leave some time for some questions and answers, and I want to be mindful of that. So perhaps I obviously want to say thank you, and I'll do that a little bit more formally in a few minutes, but I do want to take the opportunity now to open the floor to whatever questions I know you have some that are prepared, and perhaps there's some from the floor. I'm an open book. I'm glad to answer anything, and certainly if it's about your project or other things that relate to where we're at in Rotary right now, let's have at it.
Okay. What we'll do is I'll monitor the questions and ask them of you,
Perfect.
Jennifer. The first one is, you clearly give so much of your time and treasure and talent to Rotary. What motivates you to continue to do so?
Well, I think that that's a really easy answer. It's people.
I'll give you softball at first.
No, it's people. I mean, that's the magic juice. I mean, we all have this opportunity to make a difference, and, being able to walk into, our own Rotary Club, I know for me that is a feeling like I've come home, and it's a sense of family. And, regardless of what's going on in our world, whether things are good, bad, if someone's sick, if someone's had a baby, I love that I'm surrounded by people who want to share in those experiences with us. And then I guess probably the bigger picture part of the answer is that, on a personal level, I am, so enamored with the opportunity for us through Rotary to make significant change in our world. And I think that it's a challenge for each and every one of us to think, what is that mark? When we lay down for the last time, what signature did we put on the world? And you know what? I don't want to waste any energy. I want to get busy working.
All right. Thank you for that answer. Jennifer, one question here is, you are a trailblazer and are helping to break the proverbial glass ceiling for diversity among the highest ranks of Rotary International. That would indicate that the future for the diversity and parity within Rotary is hopeful. However, McKinsey released a study that said that it's not quite happening that way. Just tell us how you would address this whole issue of diversity.
Well, thanks for the question. And I do have a lot to say on this topic. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that Rotary is taking very seriously right now. And we actually have a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement that was launched the better part of about a year and a half ago. And we have a task force that has now been charged over the past month and a half with starting to look at how we have appropriate dialogue. One thing that also happened last January is that our Rotary International Board set targets, or was it a year ago, January? Anyway, they set targets that we should be striving for female leadership of 30% across the board in our organization. And so, you know, that is data that's being tracked. Now, let me be very candid in saying, I don't think that we, and this is me being very candid and very personal about this answer, I believe that we need to find the right people in our organization. And I have no desire to try to wave the female flag. What I want to wave is the diverse perspective flag. And I believe that when we spend time nurturing people of all diverse backgrounds, it raises the water level for everyone. And so, you know, I think just by virtue of the fact that I'm a woman, it's pretty clear. And so walking into the room, I want women, younger members, to see themselves reflected, as you mentioned in the introduction. And when we genuinely see ourselves reflected in the people around, I think it cultivates within us the opportunity to think, there's leadership opportunities for me here, beyond what maybe I would have expected or anticipated. And so I think that, yes, we need to get to better parity in gender, and we need to bring in younger members. That's absolutely paramount and important for our organization, but we need to look for the right people. We can't do a quota check. We need to make sure that we're filling leadership potential with people who are wonderful Rotarians, regardless of their gender, their age, their sexual orientation. We want them to be great members because they're great members. And then we'll nurture them to be even better, because that's what we do. We bring leaders in and we make them better leaders.
That's great. Great answer. I got one from Bob Herman here from San Francisco. He said, yesterday in San Francisco, we celebrated the anniversary of the foundation of the United Nations, which occurred in 1945. Rotary maintains a non-voting seat. How do you see us working and collaborating even better with the union in the years ahead as we encounter challenges as environmental needs and things like that?
Great question, and thanks for that. One of the things that I think is very clear and very important is that we have, as Rotary, what was 6 areas of focus that we steer our members towards, now 7 with the inclusion of the environment. But if you take a look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, we're very much in lockstep and working hand in hand with them in ensuring that we are all rowing in the same direction. And I think that that's probably one of the most important things that we can discuss is how do we again, using this word leverage, how do we leverage these relationships, whether it's with the UN, whether it's the WHO, whether it's UNICEF, our partners, obviously the CDC, our partners that we have in polio eradication. These are all relationships that help us, again, go forward in a united way, in a united front. And so I think that as we look at those sustainable development goals, I think it really showcases very profoundly that we're all rowing in the same direction. And I think, quite candidly, that's going to be a success point for us as a global organization.
Okay, I have one here from my club, actually. As president, do you think it would be able to bring Rotary into China, which has the most people in the world?
Great question. An interesting question, actually. And we do have expatriate clubs in China right now. And what that means is that Chinese citizens are not members of those clubs, but they are people who are living inside of that country. We have extension efforts that are taking place through dialogue in other parts of the world as well. There's been conversation about Vietnam. There's been conversation about Cuba. How do we look at some of these areas and how do we bring them into our organization? I don't have an easy answer to this one. It requires diplomacy. It requires understanding of different cultures. We have 2 Rotarians, very senior level Rotarians, who are working tirelessly right now in Russia. And again, a very interesting and dynamic part of the world right now with, you know, clearly sensitivities that, you know, are part of that. What is brilliant about our organization is that we exist, we are non-political, we are non-religious. And so, you know, that is a point of pride that we need to adhere to and we need to espouse as we're talking with other people. Because we live, you know, I'm here in Canada. Certainly, you know, we have a potential election coming up right now. It hasn't been called yet. You have one in just over a month. There's tumult going on in our world, not just COVID. There's a lot of things going on, but we're a safe haven for conversation, and we need to be good with each other right now as these things are taking place. Whether it's expansion of Rotary into parts of the world that are potentially controversial, or whether it's even something regarding what is closer to home, the election in your own countries that are taking place. We need to be gentle with each other, with our members, because we have, again, this diverse perspective, and that's what makes us strong. We may come from different viewpoints, but that's how we challenge each other to be better. And so being respectful in how we approach these things is a hallmark of who we are as an organization. And we need to remember that right now, I think probably more than any other time in our collective lifetime.
It is a trying time we're in right now. I've got the question that kind of covers everything for you. What will be your priorities during your term, if elected?
Oh gosh, you want to know what my theme is going to be?
Yeah, your priorities. Which priorities do you have?
No way. We're working on that, so that's a work in progress.
Okay.
In terms of, you know, it's premature to get into a lot of what, you know, things I'm going to focus on. My focus, and this sounds like such a political answer, but it's true. Mm-hmm. My primary focus right now is ensuring that President Holger and President-elect Shaker, who come before me, that I work as tirelessly as possible to ensure that they have a successful year and that their teams have a successful year, because we are working very collaboratively together. And I think that that's a message we're trying to emulate and showcase to district leadership, to club leadership, about the continuity of leadership and how important that is, because it's not my Rotary, it's not my year, it's our Rotary. And, you know, when we get stuck into, and I'm sorry, my dog's weighing in on this, she agrees with that point. So no, but when we get stuck in the me, and the my, that's where we, you know, kind of fall apart in that continuity of leadership plan. So, you know, I'm very much interested in making sure that I support what they're doing and build upon what they're doing. And so we meet every 2 weeks right now, and will for the foreseeable future. And during that time, the General Secretary is also involved, but during that time, we're talking about, you know, what are the things that we're collaborating on, and how do we collectively move the needle together and not being isolated in a one-year dynamic. And so I'm really proud that that's, you know, the nature of how we're working together. And I couldn't be more honored that they included me very quickly into the fold and being able to be part of those discussions. And that will definitely help to inform the things that I'm going to hopefully champion along with the rest of our team from around the world in 22 and 23.
I got one for you now, Jennifer. What do you foresee as potential future initiative for diversity and inclusion within Rotary?
As a specific initiative?
How will an international organization like Rotary go about developing such an initiative like diversity and inclusion, which may mean different things across 200 different countries?
Well, Ces, you just hit the nail on the head. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is something, the conversation, the way that we're having the conversation right now is that as we look at our Rotary organization and the various regions that we represent, this is a topic that means something very different in different parts of the world. If you think of one country, and I won't get into naming countries, but or regions, but in one part of the world, the dialogue about diversity, equity, and inclusion might be about age. In another part of our organization, that it might be about gender. In another part of our organization, it might be about all those two things and sexual orientation. You know, so it's a region. I think that there's going to be a regional kind of approach to how we look at this, because there's not one size fits all. And, you know, that I think that's going to be the hallmark of how we're going to find success. There's lots of things that are common between us in terms of what we all want to live fulfilled lives. So the common bonds there, they are good and they're strong. But we also need to recognize that, you know, some people think of things differently. And it's when we have that dialogue and those conversations, it moves the needle for everyone. I was at a taping, and I'll just wrap on this. I was at a taping of Oprah's program a year or two before she stopped broadcasting on regular television. And one of the guests was Gloria Steinem. And she made the comment, and I won't give you the back text of the whole show, but you know, out of the mouth of the mother of feminism, she said, "We got it wrong." And I mean, talk about like a moment of what? And she said, "Only when the pendulum swings to the center and men and women are equal nurturers will we have true equality." And, you know, I walked away from that feeling like, holy mackerel, you know. And the lesson also learned out of something like that is that we can change our thinking at every age that we exist. You know, I think we all have an opportunity to stretch our boundaries, and that's what, you know, I think in many ways this organization provides us the opportunities to do, and it provides us the opportunities to do exactly what we're celebrating tonight. And I want to just end by saying my sincere kudos to all of you for what you're doing, what you're going to do. And I cannot wait to see the results of how this blossoms and flowers and grows. And I hope that, you know, it's going to be hard to tell some of these stories because, you know, these are vulnerable people. But what you can do in telling your story about this project is you can talk about how you have been changed. And as you share those stories with people, start to think about, what did this do to you inside? And that's the stuff that you're going to need to share, because that's what makes a difference in our life. So congratulations. I can't wait, like I said, to keep watching what you're doing. And thanks so much for having me here with you. I'm really proud of every one of you for all your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It was fantastic to have you. We had everybody with the wave and the clap. We have to do this virtually. You got some more ideas for us on how to do things with Zoom meetings and other ways that we can get to you. But thank you so much for giving that. And I like to quote the one quote you gave earlier: to live in a society you want to have, you have to help build it. We've got to make sure everybody keeps thinking about that. It's a very good one. Thank you so much. And this year, this first five is making the homeless crisis a priority. And to that end, as your gift, our gift to you for being our speaker of the day, in your honor, we are making a donation of $1,000 to different nonprofits in our respective cities to support the unhoused residents in our respective cities.
Wow.
Thank you for joining us this past evening. And now I think I'll turn it over to Jeff from Seattle.
Thank you, Ces, and greetings, fellow Rotarians and guests. And Jennifer, good to see you again. I believe we met at the zone meeting when I was president-elect in the before times.
Before time.
Whenever I talk about Seattle 4, I frequently say that I stand on the shoulders of giants, and not just from Seattle, but from all the first five clubs. Most of you know the Paul Harris story, but I wanted to take a minute to connect some more dots. Harris started corresponding with Homer Wood, a lawyer out of San Francisco who organized Club Number 2 in November of '08, and then Arthur Holman, who founded Oakland in that same year. Holman was the San Francisco manager for Travelers Insurance, and in '09, he talked about Rotary to his Seattle counterpart, Roy Denny. The Alaska-Yukon Pacific expedition was getting underway, times were booming, Denny and others welcomed the Rotary idea. 3 men emerged as leaders of the Seattle Club at that time and ultimately were very influential in the Rotary early movement. It was Roy Denny, who I just mentioned, and who became the club's first president, but also 2 gentlemen that are very fond from a Ford perspective, Jim Pinkham, a 27-year-old lumber wholesaler, and Ernie Skeel, a 28-year-old lawyer. At the initial national meeting in Chicago in 1910, Skeel helped draft Rotary's first constitution. He said, "Reciprocity in the largest sense means not just getting, but also giving. We should be willing to give our time and treasure to ideas which uplift our people." Pinkham and Skeel are recognized as helping to bring forward the concept of what would ultimately become our motto, service above self. Another significant chapter in Seattle 4 history I wanted to share, especially in recognition of Jennifer's accomplishment, is when Seattle 4 worked to form a new club in the Pioneer Square International District. The charter was slightly altered from the standard Rotary charter by striking out any reference to male-only membership. The application was returned unapproved because the new club had deleted the male-only clause and several other minor elements to comply with the interests and realities of this new emerging club. The International Club submitted a resolution in 1986 to Rotary International proposing that women be admitted as Rotarians. This resolution was combined with other similar resolutions by other clubs and was soundly defeated by a 2-to-1 margin. On July 31st, 1986, the club unanimously voted to admit women because members such as Bob Hashimoto spoke against discrimination. Because it was believed that admitting only 1 or 2 women would create pressure on those individuals, the club decided to admit several women, and ultimately 15 were proposed and admitted in '86. The club was aware of a California case pending in the United States Supreme Court, Board of Directors of Rotary International versus the Rotary Club of Duarte. The Club of Duarte, California had admitted women in compliance with California law against discrimination, but was subsequently expelled by RI, hence the litigation. In order to prevent being expelled, the Seattle International District Club filed a lawsuit in the Federal Court of Seattle. And finally, in September of '86, the press release included then President Jim Johnson's comment. "Rotary is a great organization. We are good Rotarians and we subscribe to everything Rotary stands for, except one thing, that it does not allow women as members." The Duarte case was decided in May of '87, and the court upheld the fact that RI had to comply with California's public accommodation. And faced with that, in Washington State, Rotary International decided not to litigate against the new international club. And in 1989, the RI Council on Legislation amended the Rotary bylaws to eliminate the provision of women as Rotarians. And this actually strikes a chord with my own Rotary journey, because it was in '87 that my club sponsored me as a young man who knew nothing about Rotary to join as a GSE team member and travel from the Seattle area all the way across the world to the Midlands of England as a GSE team member representing Seattle. And I was well coached on having to defend the action because it was met with a lot of skepticism and more from some of the Rotarians in that experience. But it was really a transformational experience for me. And I always pledged that I would return the favor. And so I'm very proud to be representing number 4, to have already concluded and passed a resolution on diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of our work to continue to move Rotary in the right general direction. Thank you so much for allowing me to participate in this wonderful get-together today.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and thank you for those thoughts and for wrapping up our program today. So once again, I'd like to thank you all so much for joining us today from all over the world, and of course, thank you again to Jennifer Jones. I know You have a very busy schedule, so how about a virtual round of applause once again for our speaker and future president, Jennifer Jones. I would also like to thank, in addition to Melinda, as we had mentioned, all the work that she put into preparing this program today. I also want to thank Mariah, Bob, Pat, Caroline, Chrissy, Charisse, and Susan for the yeoman's work they did in putting together today's program.